What's up, guys? Today we've got a video that's supposed to tell us what atheists think. But first, it looks like there's actually going to be a bit of a familiar twist to today's episode. Probably something to do with a little chibi avatar that most of you are familiar with. Ever since I started using different avatars, I've been inundated with comments saying that they liked the old Suris better and they want to see him again. So, this is the way that you're going to get that. It won't happen all the time, but I figure the rotation will at least make sure that everybody gets a little bit of what they want. Anyways, on to the fan art as usual. First off, we've got one that's a little uncomfortable in that it's apparently me kissing Jimmy, Mr. Atheist. I know we've done collaborations before, but never quite like that. Anyway, this next one makes a whole lot more sense if you've been on my Discord server. This one is from Drake, who's a regular there, and it's me being puppeted by Oz. You know, the same Oz that made me sing Drive My Van Into Your Heart? That Oz, because apparently every day I have to get at least one more little reminder that that was a thing. Apparently he's got something planned for my birthday, which is in one day. Not sure if I should be terrified or not. And lastly, we have this piece from Big Daddy, which is another one of those that makes me look more badass than I actually am. Alrighty, fan art section out of the way, let's go ahead and roll that intro. Alright, let's knock the rust off this old avatar and see what we've got in this video about how atheists think.
What does it mean when somebody says they're atheist, that they don't believe in God? What is it exactly that they don't believe in?
God. They don't believe in God. That's actually the definition of atheism. They don't believe in a God. Whether it's philosophical or colloquial, neither one of them believe in a God. It's not very complicated.
Is it that they don't believe that there's a power greater than themselves? Or is it that they don't believe in some being in the sky that's deciding what's going to happen to you and what's not going to happen to you? Now, I can understand not believing in that, in a being that's choosing for you.
I'm sure in the same way that a Christian can understand not believing in the Norse gods. Pretty sure the logic is exactly the same. You find one of them silly and contradictory, and therefore you dismiss it. You find the notion of what essentially boils down to a sky daddy silly, and so you dismiss it.
I can't understand not believing in a power greater than yourself, because if you do not think that there's a power greater than yourself, how can you ever really get your mind right? How will you pull yourself out of any struggle that you have in the mind, any struggle that you have in life?
Okay, so may I just argue the converse? How does there being a higher power other than yourself actually help with your own internal struggles? If the power is separate from you and greater than you, if it merely exists, which seems to be what you're arguing for, not that it cares about you in any way, shape, or form, but it merely exists, how does that power existing help you with your daily struggle? This is an issue you might come up with when talking with someone who's a deist, for example. Deists literally have a God belief that doesn't stand on the God interacting with you at all. It's the definition of the deistic God. So, again, I don't understand how simply believing in a higher power of some kind helps you in your day-to-day life.
So, the belief in God, or an understanding of God as a power greater than yourself, and as a system that works greater than yourself, a system, a winning system, a power. So will we say a power that provides a winning system? Yeah, because even if you look at the power within yourself, God within you, God living in you, your highest consciousness.
Okay, so now we've gone from the thing being higher than you and greater than you to the God being within yourself. I am familiar with some religions that actually have a God belief that stems from the self, but you said a higher level of consciousness. That's something that sounds like it needs defining, because it sounds very vacuous. As in, what is actually a higher level of consciousness? How would it manifest? How would we be able to tell if somebody actually reached a higher level of consciousness versus being, say, serene? If someone has made peace with themselves, for instance, you might define that as them reaching a higher level of consciousness. But that's something that people can reach through something like meditation, which doesn't require any type of God belief whatsoever in order to function. And if you were to argue that we needed to believe in the God within ourselves, then if that God is already there within ourselves, then believing in it or not won't change the fact that it's there, so I still don't see any functional difference behind believing in it or not. So how is this supposed to help me in my day-to-day life?
that power provides that winning system for you through the information that you're going to receive and accept.
What information am I going to receive? Again, if you've defined this God as something that's within me, then it's something that was already there to begin with. No information that I receive is going to be different. The problem here, though, seems to be that you have a God belief of some variant that is so wishy-washy in its definition that it could mean literally anything, and the converse of that is that it would mean absolutely nothing. What I'm saying is, your definition of God belief tastes like chicken.
Yeah, and even when you look at the power within yourself, and if you feel that you're God, what laws are you holding it up against? So I don't know. For me, being an atheist is like going through the world lost.
How? Again, you've so ill-defined everything so far that I don't understand why you think an atheist would be lost. The only atheist that I can see that's currently lost is me trying to sift through all of this. I'm not trying to be overly negative or make fun of you or anything. I'm just trying to see what point you're trying to get to.
And this is not for me to, this is where judge not comes in. If I meet an atheist, which I have, I know a couple of people, I don't sit there and try to persuade them. I have said things sometimes like, you really believe in God?
Which is probably one of the most condescending things you can say to an atheist, especially when most of us have been inundated by the Romans 1:20 shtick. You know, that whole biblical notion that God's invisible qualities have been clearly seen, and so all people know God in their heart. Let's just ignore the fact that the historical context of that verse doesn't actually mean that everybody literally knows God and has it written on their hearts. I could make an argument from exegesis here, talking about how Paul was talking to a very specific church at that time that had fallen away from Christ, but I don't know if I really need to go into the history of that because it doesn't sound like you're talking about the Christian God. Whatever definition you are working with is incredibly vapid.
You know there's a God, something like that, but I don't get into arguments with people about it. I just had to put this out there today, what was coming from my heart, because I put a post up on Instagram that said God is great, and so are you because you're made in the image of God, something along those lines. And what was the other thing? Yeah, and so then after that also, what is the greatest ideal of myself I can be? Confident, poised, and relaxed. After I put the post up, I have to laugh because I know I'm going to have to edit this because it'll pause this, but actually I'm not even going to do it because the whole way I have to download these things is I'm just going to take the shortcut.
This section right here is actually the reason why I'm not going to edit out your pauses in post. I could do it, as it's incredibly easy. It's a matter of 2 clicks and hitting Control-D. Doesn't take any time out of my day to do that, but you don't seem to want to do it, so I'll go ahead and leave you in here raw. Anywho, based on your Instagram post, I can only assume that means that you are talking about the Christian God, since being molded in the image of a God is very much a Christian notion. But based on all of the vague and vacuous definitions that you've given so far, it seems like you don't believe in a God per se, but more so the idea of a God. I'll go out on a limb here and say that you were born into a Christian family of some kind, and therefore find yourself culturally Christian, but seem to tend towards some of the more spiritual aspects of faith, and as such you find yourself in these really ill-defined notions, and now you find yourself in a situation where you think that you need these ill-defined notions in order to better yourself. That's not necessarily a problem in and of itself, but it does seem like you can't understand why other people might not need this notion. For me personally, when I want to improve myself, it usually is because I see something in my life that I don't like, and I want to fix that. Hell, you're talking to somebody who used to be a rabid homophobe. I have a few stories on my channel talking about some of the ways that I used to think back when I was a young Earth creationist, and it wasn't exactly a very healthy mindset. But anyways, let's continue.
So please forgive the pauses. And see, even me saying that now, what was I saying about God and the whole thing, going through life confident, poised, and relaxed? Yeah, it's just about winning. So, as I was putting after I put the post, I was thinking like, so a church person started following me, and I was like, oh God. But I shouldn't even say, oh God, it was just funny because then I questioned myself, like, oh, what kind of image am I putting out there? But that's what I'm talking about. It's not about an image that I'm putting out there. It's like people should learn and understand that God is great. When you can get that understanding, you just win. It's a win-win-win. But you have to understand that God is a loving force. It's not that judgmental force like, oh, you went out drinking last night? You're a dirty sinner.
Okay, so I think I'm starting to see what you're getting at, but your presentation is really everywhere. So on the one hand, you can't understand how an atheist functions without an idea of God, and on the other hand, you don't approve of the Christian being incredibly judgmental and using the idea of God as a scapegoat for their own bigotry. And on the last foot, we seem to have one more issue though, and that is that you think that believing in God and believing that God is all-loving somehow means that everything in your life will turn positive, and it's a win-win scenario. The obvious problem here is that you haven't exactly explained why. You've simply asserted why. You've said that believing in God and believing that he's all-loving means that everything starts falling into place. But without any clear reasons as to why that is, it doesn't make any sense. Not to mention, you seem to have various ideas of what God is from various religions and cultures mishmashed together into your own personal idea. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. Go ahead, keep it. But I think it's safe to say that some Christians might not understand how you believe in a God in the same way that you don't understand how atheists cannot believe in a God.
See, that's not God. Or even certain things in how your church tells you how to dress. So it's like, get an understanding of the natural laws, because that's the quickest way that you can really see and experience God. People say they don't see God. I see God every day.
Okay, so it's just the argument from look at the trees. Look at the trees, therefore God. Sorry, that's not really compelling.
And it's a beautiful thing, because your life is your perception.
No, your life is your life. The way you perceive your own life will change whether or not you have a positive or negative outlook. It'll change your paradigm, but it won't actually change your circumstances. For instance, if you're in poverty, no amount of positive thought will somehow get you out of poverty. You're going to need hard work and a little bit of luck. You also have to be careful of not falling into toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is just the belief that if you stay positive, you'll be able to power through whatever obstacles you encounter, which isn't exactly a realistic approach to things. It can also set you up for crumbling down and breaking down much easier in the future. Keep in mind, I'm not saying don't be positive. There is a fine line between positivity and toxic positivity. And the only reason I'm even getting into this is because this video's all over the place and the subject matter's literally everywhere.
It's been said that there is no reality, only perception. Yeah, that's truth.
No, it's not. Reality exists with or without your perception. Now, there might be certain aspects of that reality that literally wouldn't exist without your perception, like, say, color. And especially considering that my theory of truth, personally, is that truth is that which comports with reality, the idea that reality is just your perception means that truth would only be your perception. Those ideas aren't exactly congruent with one another. I'm not saying you have to share my personal theory of truth, but I am saying that based on what I understand truth to be, yours is kind of nonsensical.
That's true, because how you perceive this world is how you are going to receive the world. And you can never outperform your self-image. You're never going to live a life that's greater than the way you see yourself. So you see the world through you. And the best way to even know who you are is to know God.
Again, how? Knowing God logically entails that you understand this God exists now, but understanding that God exists does not somehow get you to knowing yourself. That's a non sequitur. Knowing yourself is a different thing. It's completely different in category. A God might be able to help you with that, but it depends on which God turns out to be real, if any of them. Until then, the only thing that we're left with is your assertion that you need to know God before you know yourself, and that you'll never be able to outperform your self-image. Although for me, my self-image isn't exactly that great. I don't think I'm that wonderful at making videos, and I don't think I'm that good at anything that I put my mind to. Funnily enough, though, it is that self-image that makes me want to get better at doing things. It's constantly thinking that I'm not good at what I'm doing that allows me to strive to be better. I know tons of other people who are incredibly talented in their respective fields. but they put themselves down and don't think that they're good at what they actually are amazingly good at. So sorry, I'm gonna have to call bullshit on that whole claim that you're only ever as good as your self-image. It's not exactly the case. That's not how we see that behavior manifest in reality. But considering that you define reality as the way you perceive it, the only way that you could ever receive your own reality is in such a way that it's completely subjective only to you. And therefore, the ways that it makes sense for other people can't make sense to you, because they have different perceptions, and therefore they receive reality differently in your worldview. So, what's the takeaway here? Well, I don't really know where I'm going with this. It would be easier for me to structure some final thoughts if this video had actually been structured at all. I guess the real problem I have, though, is that 1, the notion that you have to know God to know yourself is complete and utter bullshit. The other issue I have is saying that you don't understand how atheists can, exist, and then asserting that those atheists do believe in a God because of biblical scripture or something. We don't actually choose our beliefs. If that atheist doesn't believe in God, then they don't believe in God. You can assert that they do, but that doesn't mean that they actually do. I would personally really like to see this notion that atheists do in fact know what God is eventually stamped out. Just like I don't like it when atheists say that Christians and pagans and anybody from another religion is just pretending. I know that one camp does this more than the other, but it doesn't make the grievance unfounded. With that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I should be able to release Discount Hoven 7 over the weekend. As I've said before, please make sure to check out Logic's channel to see it when it airs. I hope you guys have a wonderful time. I will see you guys on my birthday for a stream, probably, maybe, hopefully. But with all that out of the way, the usual links are in the description below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Insert end of video tagline here.